Are you currently toying with the idea of taking a stab at becoming a website designer? But then when you search online, you can't really find any clear information on how much you could actually make. People always ask me, if I become a web designer, how much should I charge and how much can you make as a new website designer? So to try to answer this question, a couple of years ago, I actually did a little bit of not scientific, but research into what people were charging. I looked at the websites of my own past Square Secrets business students and a lot of other Squarespace website designers that I found on Google. And then I averaged out the prices to see what was going on in the Squarespace web designer world and came to the conclusion that a smaller 5-page website built by a newer designer was going for about $2,000 US. Now that pricing is from a couple years ago, and pricing has definitely increased since I did my first little research project. Just recently, I did the same research, and this year when I looked at pricing, it had definitely really changed. Now, I should clarify, the prices that I'm stating here are just for a website. That means no branding, no copywriting, just a website build. And again, even today, I did notice that the most common package that web designers have is for like a 5 or maybe 6-page website build. Now, I'd say a 5 or 6-page website is on the smaller side of websites, and it is also probably the most appropriate for new businesses. More established businesses, they tend to have larger websites. They often require integrations and online shops. And of course, these things obviously increase the project price. But just for easy comparison, I'm talking about just a website here. Now, the other thing which I noticed this year when I was looking was specifically the difference in pricing in the UK versus the US and Canada, which I'm going to share with you. In the UK, I noticed that these newer designers were charging on average like 2,000 Great British pounds for a 5 or 6-page website. Now, the story in the US and Canada is quite different, where average pricing is more like $4,000 for a new designer for a similar website. Now, I should clarify, these are really starting intro designer price points. I've spoken to quite a few of my students more recently who are charging more like $9,000, $10,000, $11,000 per Squarespace website design project. I've definitely noticed that the more experienced established designers and web design agencies, pricing tends to be hovering around like the 10K price point these days, give or take a couple grand. Then people with a little bit of experience under the belt, maybe a couple years, and a really killer portfolio, they are definitely commanding these 10K projects these days. So I hope if you're watching this and you're new to the web design world, that gives you a little bit of a rough idea of what you could reach in just a couple years. Now, the caveat to this is that you will not make this kind of money if your only client finding strategy is Fiverr or Upwork. All of the prices that I've listed are from designers who implement a marketing strategy and who get clients through their own efforts and their own websites, not by working on freelancer platforms. If you haven't yet figured out your marketing strategy to get clients off of Fiverr or Upwork, definitely take a look at my quiz, which client finding method matches your personality type. I'll link that up there for you. Now, what we've been talking about so far is pricing per project, which is great and all, but you might still be wondering, so what does that actually result in a year? So I personally would do a website project in 2 weeks, working with just one web design client at a time. And I think that's a very attainable timeline for other people too. I was actually doing this timeline when I was still in university doing projects on the side of my degree. And then when I continued full-time, I actually continued to keep the 2-week process, but I just had a lot more free time in those 2 weeks to work on other stuff in my business too. So going back to how much you can make and how many projects you're fitting into the year. So let's say you decide to take 4 weeks vacation a year, and there's 52 weeks in the year minus your 4 weeks for vacation. That leaves you with 48 weeks to do client projects. Now, doing one project every 2 weeks. So let's say you're just starting out as a website designer, charging the going rate in the US and Canada at the moment for a smaller website by a newer designer, so $4,000. Take $4,000 times that by 24 projects, and that gives you $96,000. Now, if you give it a couple years, get a bit of experience, my students who are charging 10K per website raise their prices to that rate in anywhere from like 1.5 years to 3 years. And so if you do 24 of those 10K projects in a year, that brings you to $248,000. Of course, you are definitely gonna have expenses in your business, and you're gonna be a good human and pay your tax, but even still, as you can tell, web design is a fantastic industry to be in. And the best part by far is that this isn't one of those jobs that you need a degree for. My past student Lindsay had a background in journalism and no experience in website design at all, but with her job at the magazine on shaky ground, she decided to teach herself web design online. How'd it go for her? Well, within 2 years, she went from no clue about building websites to consistent $11,500 design projects. Yes, really, 11 grand. To learn about how she did it and how you can too, watch this video next for Lindsay's full story.